it play and call it work.
Hello there, Wargamers. Luka here from MiniWarGaming to talk to you about the new Sisters of Battle, the Adepta Sororita, and their new Codex. Now, this is going to be a first impressions. It's been a long time coming. It's been 2 years since Adepticon, they were announced, and 16 years since the Witch Hunters book in 3rd edition came out. Now, technically, they did get an index at the beginning of 8th edition, so if you want to say that was their most recent book with new rules, you're right. They technically did get new rules. They're fully playable from the index and all that good stuff. But I mean, a proper codex with all of the narrative, you know, all of the relics, all of the warlord traits, in this case, the stratagems, and new rules, new models, technically some new models, right? Here you go. It's been a long time coming. And I know I'm excited. I get excited for new stuff, right? I can't imagine how excited those of you out there who have been waiting a decade more for this to come out, right? Like, worried that the sisters were going to go the way the squats went way back when, and other lost armies from the past, Exodites, technically never had models, but you know, stuff like that. In this case, they're back and they're here to stay, thankfully. Now, I was pretty certain they're going to get new rules anyways. A lot of us here at MiniWarGaming were. I'm sure a lot of you out there were certain as well, just because they had index rules, right? Like, why would you give them index rules? Why wouldn't you just let them fade away? Barely anyone played them. A lot of them were just a showpiece on a lot of shelves, right? A thing of the past. But they decided to give them some justice, bring them back in new sculpts, new models, new plastic, new rules. Same playstyle, though. That hasn't changed. This is a toughness 3, strength 3 army that's going to drive up to your face, your opponent's face, as fast as they possibly can, and blow them away with the Holy Trinity. Now, I am a huge fan of this Codex, and I can guarantee you I'm going to at least play them a handful of times after this, so expect more Sisters of Battle battle reports to be coming out in the future of Warhammer 40k on MiniWarGaming.com. And I'm also a huge fan of the fact that we can use our old models, because we do have a lot of Sisters of Battle. If I had to throw a number out there, I think we have about 4,000 to 5,000 points of them. It's nothing super big, but it's a sizable force, and you can do a lot with it, right? We're allowed to, we can use all those old models to a pretty effective degree. And anyone out there, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you out there want to buy the new plastic sisters because they look amazing, first and foremost. And there's a few new kits as well, in the form of characters and an alternate build for the Penitent Engines, if I recall. The Zephyrim squad, I believe, is new as well. We'll talk about those in a moment after the armies of the Ecclesiarchy rules. But it's good to know that you can just go out there and buy this Codex and you're good to go right away. Let's get into the meat of this Codex. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to try and keep it short and concise, which is one of my biggest weaknesses, and try and keep it interesting without rambling on. Let's see if I can do that for you. Now, I want to remind you that there is a game in the MiniWarGaming Vault with Kenny. The Vault is what supports us here at MiniWarGaming, and if you want to support us at MiniWarGaming, I bid you to go check out the game in the Vault with Kenny. You can get yourself a 7-day free trial, and in that period of time, you can check out the rest of our content to see if you like what you see, and we are throwing out now a lot of new original content as well. We're currently in the works with that. It's kind of getting back down to the more informative, what's up in the hobby, maybe the goofy stuff and all that, as opposed to just more and more battle reports. It's something more for the Vault members. And also, if you can't really afford the Vault membership or you don't want to commit to a subscription, we do have the store, which supports us greatly as well, where you can buy our dice, the little Top Cat dice, the Dancing Matthews, the vest, the mountain, all of that. As well as just like the generic MiniWarGaming dice. We have shirts, all that silly, fun 40k stuff, and kind of the sayings over the years and things that have stuck, and things that are kind of inside jokes. If you've been around for a while, you'll recognize a lot of those shirts. That's shop.miniwargaming.com. That's a great way to support us here. And we appreciate any form of support at all. Just even watching us here on YouTube helps, right, in a way. Anyways, to the book. The Army of the Ecclesiarchy. Obviously, a faction of the kind of like the religious or the zealot kind of aspect of the Imperium, right? A hand of the Inquisition. They work for the Ordo Hereticus, I believe. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I'm almost certain they work for the Ordo Hereticus. Like, each Ordo has a specific like military faction that works for them quite well. They do branch out and they use obviously the Imperial Navy and all that stuff, but I'm rambling. To the book, to the rules. Here we have 4 rules you get for being this Codex. Well, these are the rules that you have on the data sheets. You have Acts of Faith. You are going to have the Shield of Faith. You're going to have the Zealot rule. And I believe the last one is the Sacred Rites. Now, the Sacred Rites and the Acts of Faith have been reworked. Technically, Zealot has as well. I'm going to talk about the minor changes. Zealot. It's a very bittersweet change. If you're familiar before, Zealot just let you reroll failed hit rolls. It was just a thing you had. You always rerolled. Didn't matter how long you were in combat. Now it has been reworked. You reroll all hit rolls now. And that's good for multiple reasons. That means any negative modifiers you're looking at to hit something, you just get to reroll it. And this is for close combat attacks. The only other change is the fact that Zealot only works on the turn you charge, were charged, or the unit performed a heroic intervention. Now that does limit to how often this works. But when you're putting into fact the units that have Zealot, the Sisters Repentia, the Flagellants, the Penitent Engines, they're probably going to kill whatever they get into contact with anyways. So you're not too concerned about being in prolonged combats. And if you're in prolonged combats, that goes against the philosophy of how the Sisters of Battle play anyway. So I think this is a buff more often than not, because I think the Sisters Repentia with their Eviscerators, it's a giant two-handed chainsword that's -1 to hit, but strength times 2, -2, flat 2 damage. It's a great weapon. They have a lot of attacks, especially near a missionary or a preacher. And they just tear through enemy infantry. Just absolutely, they tear through light vehicles as well. A lot of things like that, especially if you have a Repentia Superior, giving them the lieutenant, sort of buff, where they get to reroll wound rolls of 1. It's great. The -1 to hit isn't that painful anymore. The hit on 4s reroll everything. They have 3 attacks each with a character supporting them nearby. The Flagellants, they have D3 attacks each. There's a stratagem that buffs them to flat. Bonus 3 attacks each for each attack they do. Rerolling all hit rolls, they'll tear through a horde of things, or even tear through bigger things too, because it's Warhammer 8th edition, Warhammer 40k 8th edition. You don't really care about defensive stuff. You just want more attacks that do more damage, that have some rend or armor penetration. And the Flagellants are great for that. The Repentia are great for that. Zealot is just a good rule, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Now, for the other rules, the Shield of Faith, that is the rule that gives all of your, units with the Shield of Faith rule in this book, which is your Sisters of Battle, your Celestian squads, pretty much the girls. All of the girls in here have Shield of Faith. Some of them have Zealot. I think it's only the Sisters of Repentia that have Zealot. They're the one unique unit that has all 4 rules. So you'll find a lot of the Sisters themselves don't have Zealot. So the Canoness, the HQ, all the Battle Sisters, the troops, the elites, and all that, the Seraphim, they don't have Zealot, but they do have Shield of Faith. The Shield of Faith is also on the Sisters' vehicles as well. That gives them a 6-up invulnerable save. In addition, they're allowed to deny a psychic power on 1d6, but each one of them can do it. And there are ways to mess around with that. You're probably thinking, well, I can stop smites. So you can stop smites, the first smite, and you can stop all of the other very low cast powers. It's very, maybe you'll get lucky, and you know what? If you do stop it, you get Miracle Dice. And I'll explain how Miracle Dice work in a moment. It's a nice rule to have, and there are ways to augment that, and they're shown in the Sacred Rites, and they're shown in the Stratagems, and that's pretty much it for the Shield of Faith. It hasn't changed at all. It's just a nice rule. There's also ways to augment the 6-up invulnerable save. If you're near Celestine, it makes it a 5-up. I believe there's a Relic, and there's Relics and Stratagems. I don't know if there's Stratagems, but there's at least a Relic that also gives an aura of that. So if you have the Relic and you're near Celestine, technically all your units within 6 would have a 4-up invulnerable save, and that works on your vehicles as well. So you can have vehicles with a 4-up invulnerable save, though unfortunately that does require Celestine and this character with a Relic to stay back near all these vehicles. Not ideal, but it's something you can do. The next rule is Sacred Rites. Actually, I don't know if this was reworked or added. I apologize on that one. But the way this works now, you have to think of this as your Space Marine Combat Doctrine-esque ability. The Space Marines get combat doctrines, bonus rules in certain phases, certain turns of the game based on whatever doctrine they want to be in, assuming the entire army of Space Marines only. Once they add one more thing, a Knight, Guard detachment, they lose that rule. Now in this case, it's the same for the Adepta Sororita. As long as they include everything in this book, so Adeptus Ministorum, or any of the your orders, which are your houses you come from, Adeptus Sororita and or Adeptus Ministorum. So the Sororita have the Ministorum and the Sororita keyword anyway. So anything in this book gets a Sacred Rites rule. Now there's 6 Sacred Rites. At the start of the game, when you choose your Warlord Traits and all that, this before you deploy, you get to choose the Sacred Rite. There's 6 of them, like I said. Or you can do what Luka likes to do, and what you probably should do because it's cool. Though I understand in a competitive setting, you'd probably want to pick one. You get to roll 2d6, and you get both of them. Now, if you roll doubles, that unfortunately doesn't stack. So you're kind of stuck with the same one, and you rolled and you didn't get to pick it, but there is a stratagem that allows you to re-roll your Sacred Rite. So if you had rolled 2 and you rolled doubles on 1, you're allowed to re-roll one of the doubles, and you'll get another one because you can't roll the same one again with that stratagem. And it's only 1 command point, so it's not that bad. To give you an overview of what these do, there's They're pretty basic. We have Hand of the Emperor. When this unit with this Sacred Rite advances, you get to add 1 to their advance rolls, and when they charge, you get to add 1 to their charge rolls. Now, before I go any further, I probably should mention what has Sacred Rites. It's pretty much all the Battle Sisters as well. You're looking at things like the Penitent Engines and the Flagellants and the non-sister support characters like the Preacher and the Missionary. They don't actually have Sacred Rites. It's all about the holy nature of the sisters themselves. The next one is the Spirit of the Martyr. It's the same, very similar rule to being near a Space Marine Ancient with the banner. Whenever one of your models with the Sacred Rite rule is slain on a 5 or more, you roll a d6, you get to shoot or you get to fight with 1 attack based on where you are. If you're in close combat, you can't shoot, obviously, so you have to do an attack, but if you're killed through shooting, you get to shoot your gun before you go down. In my game, I rolled for 2, and I ended up getting Hand of the Emperor, which is the +1 to advance and charge rolls, and I ended up getting Spirit of the Martyr, which was fitting because I was playing our Martyred Lady, which is our painted Sisters of Battle army. The next one is Aegis of the Emperor. When they do a Deny the Witch test with their Shield of Faith rule, almost forgot what it was called, they get to add 3 to the roll. So this is a great way to augment that. If you're playing against a psychic heavy army, you just have essentially unlimited denies. You'll always out-deny them, and you always get +3 to the roll. So it's almost like rolling 2d6, except the other die is always a 3, which is nice to know. So you can roll up to a 9, which is super reliable. And then with that, you'll get a lot more miracle dice as well. So that's something to consider if you wanted to take that. And you get to pick these when you see your opponent's army. So you do get to list tailor with your Sacred Rites, which is nice. Divine Guidance. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon with a Sacred Rite, an unmodified wound roll of 6 increases the armor penetration by 1 for that attack. So 0 becomes 1, 1 becomes 2, etc., etc. Not a bad one. The Passion. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. I can see this only being good for the Sister Repentia because they do have Sacred Rites and they are a dedicated close combat unit. Now, all the other dedicated close combat units in this book do not have Sacred Rites, so this won't really help them that much. Now, of course, you can charge your Battle Sisters in, but they are 1 attack, hitting on 4s with Strength 3. This is not ideal. This is not my favorite Sacred Rite, but it can be good if you run nothing but the Sisters Repentia. If you have that kind of list out there, there's your Sacred Rite. That is amazing. That will work very well. I would love to be able to do something like that, but we only have 2 squads of them. So maybe I will do that. I'll do something like that down the road. Like I said, I will be playing more of these sisters. I'll be changing it up from here and there, so expect some changes. We have the Light of the Emperor is the last one. This is the 6th one. When a morale test is taken for a unit with the Sacred Rite, you can re-roll that dice. It's they shall know no fear. Now my favorite one is definitely +1 to advance and charge. Spirit of the Martyr is very clutch as well. And the Passion with Sisters of Repentia are my favorite. Oh, you know what? So is Aegis of the Empire. I like a lot of these. The only ones I don't like is Light of the Emperor and the Passion, unless I'm doing a lot of Sisters of Repentia. Overall, this is a great rule to have. If you feel like changing up your army and including like maybe a guard detachment to a narrative list and losing your Sacred Rites, it's not the worst thing in the world to lose that. It's not like losing your combat doctrines of Space Marines. You're not losing all that much, but you are losing a cool rule. Again, it's one of your 4 rules. And the last one, the biggest change, are the Acts of Faith. Now, in the General's Handbook, we've seen these as a secondary resource you had to manage. You had a list of certain Acts of Faith you could do, and to do them, you had to use your active faith points that you gained at the start of the game by having a certain build to your list. You got more based on how many actual Sisters of Battle you brought and things like that. And, sorry, my nose is itchy. You don't actually guarantee these Acts of Faith with that old system. And I don't think a lot of you like that. I know I didn't like it that much. I remember playing a number of Sisters of Battle players, and they just, they had a plan, relied on this act of faith, and it just, you know what? They weren't very faithful, I guess, or it just felt like the whole divine intervention of the Sisters of Battle never really came up in the games. Now, I'm pretty sure in 7th edition, only certain units could do it, much like they only can now. And you had to do a leadership check, and if you passed on the leadership check, you had a list of acts of faith you could do based on the unit. They had pretty high leadership, so it almost went off all the time. Now, granted, the acts of faith from the General's Handbook, or chapter proof, sorry, they weren't that hard. Some of them are 2-ups, right? You have to use an active faith point and roll a 2-up. So you're still managing 2 different resources. You're managing command points, and you're managing your active faith points, and your acts of faith weren't really that guaranteed. Now, in this case, technically your acts of faith aren't that guaranteed, but once you do get the miracle dice to perform these acts of faith, at that point they are guaranteed. Now, this is how acts of faith work. If you've ever played Age of Sigmar and you've played as or against the Disciples of Tzeentch, this will be very familiar. The cardinal difference being that with the Disciples of Tzeentch, you always start the game with 9 Destiny dice, and these are dice you can use to swap out for any roll before you make the roll. It's the exact same mechanic here, except you don't start with any. You do start with one at the beginning of every battle round, and the way you gain miracle dice is through 5 different means. At a base level, there's obviously ways to get a lot more through stratagems, relics, warlord traits, and order convictions. You gain a miracle dice at the start of every battle round. You gain one through vengeance, sacrifice, purity, and valor. The way you gain them is very basic. You just roll a d6, you take the die you had and you put it off to the side, and you can substitute any roll, not any roll, but there's a list of certain rolls, and there's only a few exceptions to what you can't do. You take it off to the side, and you say, oh, you get to use that later if you so choose, I should say. So you say you roll a 4 at the start of your battle round. Well, then you can use that 4 for the rest of the game. You can bank on that 4 for the rest of the game. Say you absolutely need a hit, or you absolutely need a wound, or you absolutely need to advance 4. Well, there you have that 4, and you can just use it whenever you want. And it doesn't go away ever. It goes away when you use it. Now, the other ways to get these are Vengeance, Sacrifice, Purity, and Valor, like I said. Vengeance is a pretty easy one. You have to kill an enemy unit, or a unit from your army destroys an enemy unit that has the Act of Faith ability. So a unit from your army that has the Act of Faith ability destroys an enemy unit. And again, the things with Act of Faith, well, I guess I haven't said it before, it's the sisters themselves, the vehicles, and the Battle Sisters, the Celestian Squad, the Sephirim, Seraphim, the Canoness, not the support characters, or not the support units, like the Flagellants, or the Penitent Engines, or the new Penitent Engine. Can't quite remember its name right now. Anyways, the Acts of Faith only work on them, and you only gain dice through Vengeance if you kill something that has the Act of Faith rule, or kill something with a unit that has the Act of Faith rule. And that works, you get these at the end of the phase. So say it's a shooting phase, you kill something with a Sister of Battle squad. It doesn't matter if you killed 5 things or 6 things, you only ever get 1 miracle die. So at the end of the phase, you roll that die, and that's added to the die you got at the beginning of the battle round, assuming you haven't used it yet. The next one is Sacrifice. A character from your army with the Act of Faith ability is destroyed. So your Canoness and your name characters, and that's pretty much it. The other, that's not true. The Repentia Superior is a character with the Act of Faith rule as well. There's not too many Act of Faith characters. It's mostly your Canonesses and the one I just mentioned, and obviously Celestine and the new character, which I have right here. The Triumphant St Catherine is a character with the Act of Faith rule, and Judith Arusha is another character, or Arudia. It might be Arusha though. The next one is Purity. A psychic power is resisted by a unit from your army with the Act of Faith ability without actually performing an Act of Faith to deny the power. So theoretically, someone could smite, and then you'd have a 6 banked, and like, okay, well, I'm going to stop that with my Shield of Faith, and I'm going to, instead of rolling 1d6, I'm just going to use a 6, and I stop a smite. In that case, you don't actually get an Act of Faith die because you used an Act of Faith to stop it, so you can't cycle your dice out. That's a good catch on them. Next one is Valor. If you roll an unmodified 1 for a morale test taken for a unit with the Act of Faith ability, without performing an Act of Faith to do so. So you could use a 1 to automatically pass, well, not automatically pass morale, but to pass morale with a 1, and then theoretically you would get an Act of Faith die or a miracle die, but in this case they stipulate you don't. So that's, again, good clarification from them. You just can't cycle your dice. There's only, I did notice one Warlord, or there was one thing that pertained to one order that allowed you to cycle dice. And then that's pretty much it. That's how you get your dice. You roll a die at the end of a phase. And again, you can only ever get 1 at the end of every phase unless something says otherwise. So you have, say you have 5 morale checks making you roll 4 1s separately on those morale checks. You only ever get 1 miracle die. And again, you roll it, you add it to your pool, and you can use it throughout the rest of the game. Now, the second stipulation to Acts of Faith is you can only do 1 Act of Faith per phase. So you have 5 units shooting. You need them all to kind of do something cool. Only one of those units can realistically benefit from an Act of Faith. Now, there are ways to change that up. You have the Triumphant St Catherine, which has ways to do that. You have, I believe, Relic, or that's a Warlord Trait, I believe, that has that as well. There's ways to change the core rules of this army and to break them, essentially. That's how Act of Faith work. Now, the things you can use Acts of Faith on are advance rolls, charge rolls, deny the witch test, hit rolls, wound rolls, saving throws, damage rolls, and morale checks. So things you can't really use them on, that I can think of off the top of my head, you cannot automatically make vehicles explode, though as Sisters of Battle, you can make your immolators automatically explode, which I'll get to when I talk about stratagems. And you can't use them to augment the amount of random shots things would have, or random there's no random movement characteristic. So say something's got D3 shots or D6 shots, you can't be like, okay, it's got 6 shots. That's like one thing you can't use on. You can't use it on vehicles exploding either. That's pretty much, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But no, it clearly states here, and I'm pretty sure you can't use it on mortal wounds. So, but you're not really bringing Psychers as the Sisters of Battle either. So it's not like, okay, say a vehicle explodes and it does D3 mortal wounds. You can't automatically make it do D3 mortal wounds to something because that's not a damage roll. That's something else completely. And that's the limitation. So again, advanced charge, deny the witch, hit roll, wound roll, saving throw, damage roll, and morale check. What I will quickly give you an overview of what I mostly use these on, damage rolls. Your Exorcist that do D6 damage, automatic 6 damage. And the nice thing is, because you roll dice one at a time when doing the damage, when attacking, you know, you do your hit rolls one at a time, you do your wound rolls one at a time. Always bank your miracle die for the last one. So say you're shooting at an Imperial Knight or a Chaos Knight, whatever. You're shooting your Exorcist and you have 5 wounds on him, and he's got 12 wounds left, and you roll something pitiful like 7 damage. Right, you always do the first 4 rolls first, and you bank that last one for a miracle die in case you need it. The first 4 rolls could kill it, right? You don't need to use a miracle die. So the first 4 rolls do 7 damage. He's got 5 wounds left. Yet you're about to roll that last die. And you're, wait! I got miracle die. Act of faith. He just takes 5. I substitute in a 5 before rolling. It's dead. That's probably one of the better situations you can use it in. If you need a few hits to go off, say you need something to hit exactly 3 times, you roll the first 2 of its 3 shots, and then the last one you're like, I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to act of faith it. Don't care about anything else. I just need to hit 3 times. Can't think of something in that situation really you'd want to use it, but again, only 1 act of faith per phase. So you have to be smart with it as well. And the other thing I really like to use it on, because I did find myself really garnering a lot of miracle dice throughout the game. At first it's a little slow, and then it really picks up, especially playing the Martyred Lady. Use it for Overwatch. Battle Squad with a Meltagun. You have a 6 in the store. I had a lot of 6s, so I got lucky. You just, boop, all right, I automatically hit. Wounding on a 2, wounding on a 3, no save, dead. It's really like a character charging you or something, and they have maybe a subpar invulnerable save. Automatically hitting with the Meltagun sounds really nice in Overwatch, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And then obviously, advanced rolls and charge rolls are very clutch as well. Sisters Repentia can use Acts of Faith, so if you really need to make a charge roll, you just substitute in a 6, then you roll the other die. Now for certain rolls like charge rolls, because it's considered one roll, you can use more dice on those rolls. So they need to make a 9-inch charge. You just put in a 6 and a 3, a 5 and a 4, whatever, before rolling, and then you automatically make your charge. That's really nice to know you can do as well. Or if you need a 12-inch charge on something and you have 2 6s, bam, 12-inch charge. That could be very huge throughout the course of a game. These acts of faith feel like acts of faith. They feel like a divine intervention literally helping you out in this game. And Games Workshop they decided to go in the route of the Disciples of Tzeentch rule, and I think they've done an outstanding job. This is an amazing rule set. How competitive is it? I actually don't know that answer. One thing I will say, when I was going through this book and I was with Steve and we were flipping through the pages, we didn't find anything that screamed at us, oh wow, that's overpowered if you do that. Oh wow, that's overpowered if you do that. It was very much though, oh that's really good, that's really good, that's really good. Lots of synergy here, lots of synergy there. A lot of good internal balance in this book, I want to say. A lot of things seem really good. And I'm very pleased with that. Now, I'm going to cover some of the units here that have kind of jumped out at me and some changes I've noticed that were major. There's a lot of minor changes, of course, but you know what? You got to read this yourself, right? Yeah, I can't tell you everything. You'll find the minor changes out yourself. The bigger ones, though, things that I like to talk about, the Canoness obviously has a new kind of build, added the Brazier of Holy Fire to it, and it's got very unique ways it can swap up its war gear options. It's maybe a little confusing at first, maybe not for everyone, maybe it's just kind of basic. First of all, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, strength 3, toughness 3, hitting on 2s in both aspects of combat, 3 up save, 4 up invulnerable save. Overall, pretty reasonable lady. She can hit like a truck too with certain builds, and I'd fear her. She's no like Black Legion double chainsword killing character, right? Like she's overall really good, great support character, can hold her own. She can be equipped with a bolt gun, a power sword instead of 1 bolt pistol and chain sword, which she comes with a bolt gun, or she comes with a bolt pistol, chain sword, frag and crack grenades. It can be equipped with 1 bolt gun, power sword, and it additionally has a Rod of Office. A Rod of Office increases the aura of her Lead the Righteous ability by 3, so a 9-inch bubble of rerolling 1s. This model can be equipped with one of the following: instead of 1 bolt pistol, 1 Condemner bolt gun, which is the anti-psyker bolt gun, D3 damage to psychers. 1 weapon from the pistol list, which is they have plasma, infernal, and hand flamers, I believe. And this model can be equipped with one of the following. Instead of one chainsword, it can be a power sword or a blessed blade. Now, blessed blade is a relic sword. It's +2 strength, -3 D3 damage. That's a really good weapon that they can take. They have 4 attacks, 5 if they have support characters nearby. And this model can be equipped with one of the following. Instead of a chain, if this model is equipped with a chainsword, so if it didn't swap its chainsword out for anything, for whatever reason, it can have a brazier of holy fire or a null rod. It's got 4 different ways to build it. And I'm going to guess this is based mostly on the new kit coming out for the Canoness. Now, the brazier of holy fire. Whilst any models from your army that have braziers of holy fire within 6 of any demon units, you subtract 1 from their leadership. In addition, if this model has a brazier of holy fire, then once per battle, when this model fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot with, it can unleash the brazier's holy flames. When it does select one enemy unit within 12, if firing Overwatch, it's the unit that's charging you, and you roll a d6. On a 2-up, they suffer d3 mortal wounds. If it's a demon, it's d6 mortal wounds instead. So the brazier is pretty clutch to have against chaos in general. This army is meant to fight chaos. That is literally what the Sisters of Battle do. That is their thing. Much like Grey Knights. But they want to fight more. They can fight the demons, whereas the Grey Knights specialize in fighting demons. They're meant to just fight chaos. The worshippers of chaos, the followers of chaos, all that stuff. Now, it's once per game use, but there is a relic for a certain order that can use it every turn if you throw a miracle die into the fire. You have to give up a miracle die, which is fine because a lot of them can be useless when you roll like 2s or 3s, and you can use it every turn. So if you get your Canoness nice and thick in there, she can do this every turn. Unfortunately, though, she only has a chainsword if you do that. So I'm not a huge fan of that build because I like the Blessed Blade myself. The other piece of war gear is the Null Rod. If it's got a Null Rod, then it cannot be targeted or affected by psychic powers, much like the Calexis Assassin from the Assassin line. Also, in addition, whilst any models from your army that have Null Rods within 18 inches of enemy psychers, subtract 1 from the psychic test and deny the witch test taken for those enemy models. So if you do have your own psychers, then it's fine. Now, she's a really good model to have fighting against Thousand Suns. You put her out front in the bulk of your army, and you don't have to worry about getting smited, being affected by the smite psychic power, because she's the one who takes all the hits instead for your army, which is always nice to have with the Null Rod. Something to consider. I don't know how relevant that will be, but that's something that they can do. The next cool model to talk about is the Triumphant St Catherine. Now, I think they've shown off just the casket itself. What this is it's not one single model. If you're familiar with Age of Sigmar, the Bone Reapers have gotten a new character called Catacross, the Mortarch of the Necropolis, leader of the Bone Reapers. He has a weird kind of model himself. So much like Catacross, she herself has, I will imagine, have a pretty impressive model. This is, again, not just one model, it's a retinue of models. It's a funeral procession. They kind of bring around this corpse with them. I assume it is St. Catherine. I'm not too familiar with that. All I know is that Celestine wears St. Catherine's armor, if I recall. Yep, the armor of St. Catherine. Celestine does wear St. Catherine's armor. Obviously, it didn't work all that well for St. Catherine, but it works pretty well for Celestine. Unfortunately, she went down. Her thing is aura abilities. Now, with this model, you get a bunch of relics that kind of surround this procession, and they give you certain rules based on which relics are active. You always have 5 relics to begin with. The more wounds that this model takes, the more relics are damaged and no longer function. And we have the relics of the Matriarchs, which are the relics of 5 of the major orders. We have Censer of the Sacred Rose, which is the Order of the Sacred Rose. We have the Simulacrum, there we go, of the Evan Chalice, Petals of the Bloody Rose, Icon of the Valorous Heart, and Simulacrum of the Argent Shroud. Now, the more damage you take, the more relics you lose. And if you heal, you actually get the relics back. It's got 18 wounds, 3-up save, 4-up invulnerable save, can be shot, obviously, because it's got 18 wounds, and it's -1 to hit for shooting attacks. So people might try and kill it right away. It's only, the biggest thing is it's only toughness 3, so it's very easy to kill. I don't think it's that great. It clocks in at 185 points, I believe. So very fun to play, and this does allow you to break the core rules of the game. It lets you do a second act of faith per phase, as long as it's being affecting a unit with the act of faith rule within 6 inches of this model. This model has the act of faith rule, so it can be this model itself. It allows you to get more miracle dice at the start of a battle round. It +1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Sororitas units within 6. And those are my favorite ones. Once per phase, you can perform an act of faith. Yeah, when you perform an act of faith for a friendly unit within 6, you can increase or decrease the value of the miracle die by 1 before you use it to a maximum of 6 to a minimum of 1. And at the start of your shooting phase, you can do a d6 for each enemy unit within 6, +1 if they're a psyker, +1 if they're chaos, so +2 in total. On a 5 or more, they take d3 mortal wounds. And at the start of each turn, gain a miracle die. So instead of getting 1 at the start of every battle round, which you still do, you actually gain 1 at the start of every player turn with this as well. So that's my favorite rules are the start of each turn, you get a miracle die, and at the you get to do 2 acts of faith a phase. with this thing nearby, which I really like. Also, you know, +1 to hit rolls for melee attacks if you have Repention nearby are really nice. Or augmenting the miracle die is pretty reasonable as well. Make sure kind of lesser rolled ones kind of a little bit more useful. That's essentially what this does. It's got a bunch of attacks from all the defenders or those in the procession, but it's nothing really to call home about. I mean, it does have 14 attacks because there's so many of them, and they do have a fancy relic sword, +3 strength, -3 damage, but you can only attack 4 times with that one because only one of them has it. That's pretty much it. We do have the new character, Judith Arusha, who is a Order of our Martyred Lady, which is I want to say the de facto main order that you can play. And one more thing I want to talk about for HQs are Missionaries. Why do they have the lone mission rule? There's something here that Games Workshop has noticed, or maybe it's like a narrative thing. Maybe Missionaries do often just go off on their own. There's not more than one missionary in a lot of locations. Lone mission. If your army is battle-forged, no more than one missionary can be included in any detachment. Now, this missionary does not have anything fancy about him. He can take a shotgun, sure. He has Word of the Emperor, which means so every time a Ministorum unit would run away within 6 on a 4 or more, they actually don't run away. They have War Hymns, which the Preacher, which is the elite character, has +1 attack to Ministorum infantry or Militarum infantry, but you don't have Militarum in this army, within 6, +1 attack. I love Missionaries. I love Preachers. They are great for Catachan lists. They're great for guard lists, just lots of attacks in close combat. Don't know why they have the lone mission rule. It actually kind of boggles my mind. The next couple of units I want to talk about that have seen some love are the Retributive Squad and not the Penitent Engines, they got reworked with the Mortar Fires, which are the alternate builds of the Penitent Engines, I believe. And the Exorcist, also seen a lot of loving. Now, the Retributive Squad, first and foremost, they're the sisters that take the heavy versions of the Holy Trinity, the Heavy Bolter, the Multi-Melt, and the Heavy Flamer. They have 2 rules. Well, they actually got, they only got 2 new rules. They could take... They get to add 4 inches to all their heavy flamers, so all their heavy flamers are 12-inch range, which is very nice. Stick a couple of them in the Rhino, they move around, throw flames everywhere, pretty reliable. And they have access to moving and firing heavy weapons now through Faithful Advance, which is great for heavy bolters or multi-meltas. So they can move every turn and fire their heavy weapons without a care in the world. And they hit on 3s. It's wonderful. More and more heavy weapon teams are doing that, which is odd because like last edition, barely anything that was infantry got relentless unless you were like a Xenos army for whatever reason. Now in this case, a lot of like obviously the Havocs now have moving and firing heavy weapons. Iron Hands just do it across the board. They're all relentless. Now Retributors can ignore moving and fire heavy weapons as well. The next big thing I want to talk about is the Exorcist. It went up a lot of points if you're going to bring the heavy hitting D6 damage missiles. But now the Exorcist and Immolator have to have heavy bolters. You have to pay for those stocks. So right away in Exorcist, 100 points. No options to change out that heavy bolter. It's just nice to have a heavy bolter. Though the new models, which you'll see in the book here, I don't know if Games Workshop has shown them off, have the heavy bolter mounted into the front of the hull there. And the Exorcist has 2 different weapon options. It's got the Conflagration missile launcher, and it's got the Conflagration rockets and the missile launcher, or the missile launcher. Not or the missile launcher. The rockets are 40 points. They're 3d6 shots at strength 5 -2 1 damage. It's great. It's not bad. It could be great, but I find the Sisters Battle already have a lot of small arms fire when they get nice and close. Heavy bolters, you can spam those. The Sisters like to get nice and close with bolt guns. It's reliable, but they lack a lot of heavy hitting. Now, they have a lot of melta guns, but those are usually short range. Now, with the Exorcist missile launcher, which I assume most people will be using this one, it's 70 points, so it makes the model 170 points up from its previous 125, I believe. So it's pricey, but bear with me here. It's heavy 3d3 now. Instead of just heavy d6, it's -3 d6 damage each, 48-inch range. Very good. It's a very good weapon, especially since there's a stratagem called Refrain, Disdainful Refrain, or something Refrain. It's 1 command point. You get to reroll the amount of shots you get with either weapon. So it's 3d6 shots at strength 5 -2 1 damage at 48-inch range, rerolling the amount of shots. And any of the dice. So you can do all the dice or any one of the dice, or heavy 3d3 strength 8 -3 flat d6 or d6 damage, which the d6 damage is really nice when you can kind of control how much damage each one of those do. Well, not each one, but one of them does with the Miracle Die. I think the Exorcist is probably one of the bigger winners in here. Now, granted, it's still an Imperium vehicle without fly, so it is very easy to tie up. I brought 2 of these in my game to try and show them off, and I think they performed quite well, and you got to see what they do. Now, Mortar Fires are the next unit that I wanted to talk about. Now, these are the kind of new take on... what are they called? The Penitent Engines. It's a different build on them. They can either have the Buzz Blades or they can have the Flails. I think the Flails are the winner here overall because you just get so many attacks with them. The Mortar Fires and the Penitent Engines got reworked completely. like across the board. Their lower toughness. They also went, like the Penitent Engine went from like 120 or 110 points per model to 100 or to 56. It's 56 points per Penitent Engine now, and they still have that huge kind of footprint. And they just walk around destroying things. The Buzzer Blades are strength +3, so they're strength 8 with them, -3 flat 2 damage. The Penitent Flails are more of a horde sweeping weapon, so you get 3 attacks per 1 with that, and they have 4 attacks base, 5 if they're near a character, like a preacher or a missionary, and they're 3 attacks each. And they actually get an extra attack if they're armed with 2. They're actually all 5 attacks base, because you could take a flail and you could take a buzzblade, I believe. 2 heavy flamers. Yep, you can swap it out. You can either commit to 1 weapon loadout or 1 of each. But if you commit to the same weapon loadout, you get an extra attack. I'd commit to the same loadout. I wouldn't do either or. Though I guess a lot of you probably like options. But I think the flails are all around just a better winner. They're at strength 6, 18 attacks per model, hitting on 3s with Zealot. So they get to... Oh, wait, they don't have Zealots. Oh, never mind. The Penitent Engines still have Zealot. That's a major difference. I just noticed that. That's kind of a big deal. The Mortar Fires are equipped with heavy bolters. They can choose to shoot them as assault weapons so they can advance and fire the heavy bolters. Or, I guess, just move and not worry about suffering the penalty on their heavy bolters. They can swap the heavy bolters out for heavy flamers. And if they do, their heavy flamers can be counted as pistols. So it's very hard to tie these up in combat, as they just hose people down with heavy flamers on your turn if you're still stuck in combat. And then you clean them up with the flails. Now, the fact that they hit on 3s over the Penitent Engines 4s is something to note, but the Penitent Engines will hit more overall because they have Zealot, whereas these ones do not. In fact, I'm going to flip over to Penitent Engine, and bam, there's Zealot. Penitent Engines have a 5 up to ignore damage. These ones have a 6 up to ignore damage. And that's pretty much it. Oh, this one also has Anguish of the Unredeemed, where the Mortar Fires, when they die on a 4 or more, they kind of explode, but they only hit the enemy as they kind of lash out in one last attack before they go down. On a 4 or more, an enemy unit within 1 inch takes D3 mortal wounds per one of these models dying. They're pretty easy to kill. They only have a 4-up armor save, except the Anchorite, who is the leader, who has a 3-up armor save. They're T5 with 5 wounds each. 6 up to ignore damage on the Mortar Fires, 5 up to ignore damage on the Penitent Engines. They have the exact same kind of loadout and stats across the board, except the Penitent Engines hit on 4s instead of 3s. And they only have heavy flamers instead of heavy bolters. I like the heavy flamers anyways. Actually, I think I like the Penitent Engines a little bit more, because hitting on 4s, re-rolling everything with Zealot is better than hitting on 3s overall, because it's a 25% chance to miss as opposed to a 33% chance to miss. And I'm not too concerned with the shooting, because they're like a dedicated close combat unit. And as per the Mortar Fires, well, I guess one thing to note, the Mortar Fires do have the Adepta Sororita keyword. I don't think that really matters for anything, though, because they're missing the core rules. Like, they can't do Acts of Faith. They don't have Zealot. They don't have Shield of Faith. They don't have anything like that. So, yeah. And, of course, there's the Immolator. The biggest change on the Immolator is the fact that it has to take a heavy bolter as well. It's built into the hull. You can see it in pictures in the book. Now, I am grossly running out of time here because, I promised you 30 minutes, and I'm pretty much at 30 minutes right now. In fact, I think I'm over 30 minutes. So the next thing is the Battle Sanctum, a terrain feature they get for 50 points. What it gives you is, if you have units near, it counts as ruins for all intents and purposes. You get cover if you're on it, or infantry units that are entirely on the Ministorm receive the benefit of cover. Other units that are entirely on the structure only receive the benefit of cover if at least 50% of them are obscured by it. So it doesn't work for bikes or anything like that on the lower levels unless they're obscured and stuff like that. You get Blessings of the Saint at the start of each battle round. If there are Ministorum units from your army, which is everything in this book, within 6 inches of this Battle Sanctum, you gain a Miracle Die. So you actually gain 2 at the start of every battle round if you bring this terrain feature. And Consecrated Ground, you get +1 to your leadership characteristic if you're within 6. Enemies or Chaos units subtract 1 from their leadership if they're within 6 of this Battle Sanctum. It's a good narrative piece, too. I mean, you can bring in match play games, of course, but if you want to say you're defending your Battle Sanctum, you can say that in your match play games, too. You're always defending your Battle Sanctum. I think it's really good for 50 points. I'd probably add it every time. I like to think of it in the terms of Age of Sigmar. It's 50 points to buy a command point, and Miracle Dice, pretty nice to use. When you get a lot of Miracle Dice, you want to be using them every phase you possibly can to get something kind of cool going for you. And now we're going to talk about the orders and what they do, and then I'm going to talk about some of the key stratagems that have kind of jumped out at me, and then the rest, you're just going to have to find out yourself. Now, first and foremost, with the orders here, you only get an order conviction if you have the order keyword, which is like the order, bam. So if you're a battle sister, not your flagellants or your penitent engines or your support units, the auxiliary stuff, don't get it. But the things you're allowed to include in your army that don't take away from your order rules, so you'll still get the order rules and include these in your army, are Celestine, the Gemini Superia, which are her bodyguards, Hospitaller, which is the apothecary, the Dialogus, the Mortar Fires, the Penitent Engines, the Triumphant St Catherine. Celestine and the Triumph they're not part of any in particular order. They're saints. I don't think they belong to an order. And then units consisting entirely of Ministorum priests or Ecclesiarchy Battle Conclave models, which is like everything else, like the flagellants and stuff like stuff in the book you get to use, right? Stuff like that. And if you are using a Battleforged army in a match play game, the following rules apply. Priestly delegation. A detachment that does not include any priests can only include one Ecclesiarchy Battle Conclave. So put priests in your detachments, that way you can have more Ecclesiarchy units. It just stops you from spamming things like Death Cult Assassins, Crusaders, the Flagellants, and I believe the Penitent Engines. Is that Ecclesiarchy Battle? No. There's 3 different kind of factions in here. There's like Base Ministorum, there's the Adepta Sororita with the order keyword, and then there's the Ecclesiarchy Battle Conclave, which are the support units like the Crusaders, the Death Cult Assassins, stuff like that I had mentioned. And you can include those in your army as well without taking away from your order convictions. Now there's 6 orders here. We have the Martyred Lady, which is the one I played in the Vault, which is what our Sisters of Battle are painted up as. We have the Valorous Heart, the Bloody Rose, the Evan Chalice, the Argent Shroud, and the Sacred Rose. Starting with our Martyred Lady, they have the Blood of the Martyrs rule. So at the end of any phase, you gain a miracle die if one of your units with this conviction were destroyed. Now, if one of your characters with the Acts of Faith rule were destroyed, and there are Martyred Lady, you actually get 2 miracle dice, because that's the one that's allowed to double up, which is kind of nice. Now, if you had, that's like the one stipulation where you can actually get 2 per phase. Now, if you had killed something in that phase, and one of your characters had died, and one of your units have died, then you're only still getting 2, because you choose the stake at which your character died, and you get more miracle dice. Also, units with this conviction get +1 to hit if a model from their unit has been destroyed earlier in the game. Even if they came back through the Hospitaller, if they come back through those means, you still get +1 to hit. So it's kind of like a vengeance for the martyred kind of aspect, which is a cool take on the Sisters of Battle, right? The Martyred Lady, to be specific. It's probably one of my favorite ones. The other ones are really good in their own way when you combine them with their Warlord Traits and the Relics, but I'll let you figure that stuff out because that would take me. I could go on for a very long time about this book, but I suppose you want to get back to your day. The next one is the Valorous Heart, the Stoic Endurance. So they shrug damage off on a 6. They ignore damage on a 6, just like Disgusting Resilient, but it's only a 6. And they also ignore Armor Penetration 1. Now, there is a certain ability in the game through the Magifier's Tail, which also gives you a -1 to ignore damage. It actually stacks with that, so you have not -1 to ignore damage, you ignore -1 armor penetration. You actually get -2. You ignore -2 armor penetration. So the only thing that actually hurt the Valorous Heart, or can get through their armor, is the plasma or heavy weapon guns. Like you're ignoring battle cannons and stuff like that. That's nuts. Heavy bolters, all that. You're ignoring all that. You just have your 3-up saves. Now, if you're the type who likes to stick around and you like to win through attrition, there's your conviction. The next one is Quick to Anger, the Bloody Rose. This one is more for the Repentia. This one is when you resolve an attack with a melee weapon or pistol weapon, its armor penetration is always improved by 1. So the Eviscerators are AP3, all bolt pistols are AP1, all that stuff. And in addition, you get +1 attack when you charge, word charge, or perform a heroic intervention. So sisters in this conviction get the Shock Assault rule or the Hateful Assault rule, whichever one you want to go by. They're both the same. And they get additional AP as if they're in the Assault Doctrine or something like that, which is really cool. Again, works really well with Repentia, giving them more AP on their weapons, which they may need, and they get extra attacks when they charge. I don't know if it's super important to use that one, but I mean, if you want to go with Repentia, that's probably the order you want to go with. If not, we have the Evan Chalice, the Daughters of the Emperor. When a model with this conviction would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, much like the Black Templar, you ignore it on a 5-up. In addition, when you would perform an act of faith for a model with this conviction, you can first discard 1 miracle die. If you do, 1 miracle die you use in that act of faith is considered to be a 6. So things like, I need a double 6 for a charge, but I have 5 dice and none of them are 6s. So, well, I guess that's not true. You need at least 1 6. But you essentially discard a useless die to make 1 die you want to use a 6. So if you're really fishing for 6s on the dice there, well, with this order conviction, you get to discard a die to make a die a 6, which is nice. And also you ignore mortal wounds on a 5-up. The Argent Shroud, deeds not words. When a model with this or a unit with this conviction advances, it can fire ranged weapons as if it had moved without advancing. So your whole army can advance and fire weapons. A very fast sister conviction. Your Exorcist can advance and fire their heavy weapons. Your redemption squads, your retribution squads, all of a sudden can move and ignore firing heavy weapons, and now they can advance and fire heavy weapons without suffering any penalties in any way, shape, or form, which is kind of nice. Just fast sisters, right? And the Sacred Rose, the Devout Serenity. When a morale test is taken for a unit with this conviction, no more than one model can flee. In addition, after you perform an act of faith for a model or unit with this conviction, roll a d6. On a 5-up, you gain a miracle die. In addition, when resolving an Overwatch attack made by a model with this conviction, a hit roll of 5 or 6 scores a hit. So for whatever reason, this one gets 3 rules. Some of them have 1, like this Argent Shroud. Some of them have 2. Some of them have 3. It's just, I think that one's really good because it's got the most potential rules. I actually kind of like that one because you get to cycle your miracle dice. When it comes to the Martyred Lady, you do get a lot of miracle dice. You pretty much get one every phase, or you're getting a couple every turn. But with Sacred Rose, the ones you do get, chances are you're going to keep them and cycle them into new rolls. So say you just have a 2 and you don't know what to do with it, you're just going to pitch it. Yeah, it's like, okay, this squad here is going to advance. They don't really need to advance, but I'm going to advance them anyways. They're not doing anything. Here's a 2, just to use it. They roll it. They go an extra 2 inches. On a 5-up, I get to recycle that die. It's not the best, but it's something you could use it for. In addition to Overwatching on a 5 or 6 is nice, because then you can use 5s and 6s with Miracle Dice to automatically hit with Melted Guns. Not the biggest thing, but I kind of like it. I'm going to jump to Warlord Traits quickly, and I'm going to go over a couple of my favorite ones. We have the Beacon of Faith at the start of your turn. These are the generic ones, and then you have 1 per order as well. These are the generic ones. At the start of your turn, if a Warlord is on the battlefield, you gain a Miracle Die. So you gain one at the start of every battle round, and now at the start of your turn. And the Indomitable Belief is the invulnerable save of friendly infantry models from the Shield of Faith is improved by 1 to a maximum of 4-up while they're within 6 of this model. That stacks with Celestine's ability. That does the exact same thing. So your units can all have 4-up invulnerable saves as well as 3-up armor saves, which is something to consider. The other 2 I would like to mention are specific order ones. Now we have the Order of the Evan Chalice. If this warlord is on the battlefield, the miracle dice you gain at the start of the first battle round is always a 6, which is nice. That is very useful. Like it's incredibly useful. And at the start of the first battle round, if your army is battle forged and your warlord's on the battlefield, you gain D3 command points right away. Very nice. So you can they have to not be in a rhino or something like that. So you deploy them, and then on your first turn you just go in the rhino and move. Right? You can do stuff like that. But you get an extra D3 command points, and you automatically get a 6 on the first miracle die. The other one I want to talk about is the Order of the Sacred Rose. These are the ones that have the Overwatch on 5-up. They get to cycle miracle dice on a 5 or more. This one is when you perform an act of faith for this warlord, gain 1 miracle die. So this is automatically cycling. And in addition to that warlord trait, on a 5 or more, you get another miracle die. So this is a good conviction or a good order to cycle your miracle dice. So say, here's a perfect example. Say your warlord needs to advance just 1 inch, but you have a 2. So you're like, okay, I'll use the 2. They advance 2. And I automatically get a new miracle die, and on a 5-up, I get another miracle die. So that's kind of cool to use. And now we're going to take a look at some of the stratagems. First one I want to talk about is Battle Rites for 1 command points. This allows you, if your warlord is on the table, to cycle out your Sacred Rite, which is, that one you pick at the start of the game, or the 2d6 you randomly get. And if you roll doubles, then you can use this Battle Rite command stratagem to re-roll your double. Or if you don't need that Sacred Rite anymore that you currently have, you just roll into another one. And you re-roll if you got the one you just re-rolled out of. So you're not going to get the same one you just got. You're always going to get a new one for 1 command point. Pretty reasonable. Well, other than the fact you always have to roll it, so you don't actually get to pick what the new one is. But you know what? It's kind of fun to use. Now, a lot of these are really good, so this is going to take a little bit longer than what I thought, but I want to kind of go over them and the use that you can get these in. The next one is Moment of Grace for 1 command point. After making a hit or wound roll for an attack made by a Sororita model from your army, or after making a saving throw for a Sororita model from your army, you can choose to discard 1 to 3 miracle dice. These are miracle dice that are probably not going to have any use in the game. They're like 2s or 3s or whatever. And you get to add that result to your roll. Not the miracle dice's number, but the amount of miracle dice you discard to the result. So say you shot with a melted gun and you needed a 2 to wound. You're like, wow, this thing had 1 wound left. It wouldn't have had a save. I rolled a 1. What a waste. Now I have to go shoot another unit. Well, you can spend 1 command point to re-roll it, or spend 1 command point and discard 1 miracle die to automatically make it a 2. That miracle die you're probably never going to use. Why risk the re-roll if you just want to spend a miracle die on it, right? That also works for hitting and all that stuff too. More importantly, saving throws. There is a relic that gives a Canoness a 3-up invulnerable save, and if you really don't want your warlord dying, you don't want to give up warlord kill, well, if she fails a save, then if she fails 1 save that would kill her, you can spend a command point and discard up to 3 miracle dice to increase 3 to that saving throw. So automatically making your saving throw and things like that. It's really fun. Martyr's Immolation. Martyr's Immolation. Your immolators automatically blow up on a set for 1 command point, which kind of goes in line with how sisters want to play. They want to rush their immolators forward, shoot their guns, disembark their ladies, and if the immolators die, boom, automatically blow up, take D3 mortal wounds as well. No one's going to want to kill them. Well, people are going to have to kill them, but they're going to be hesitant to do it. Now, a good player can just avoid that, but it is still something that you can catch a lot of people off guard with. Heroine in the making for 1 command point, you make one of your non-warlord characters a warlord for the purpose of taking a warlord trait. So say you like one of the other warlord traits in the, here's a good example. Say you're Evan Chalice, right? And you really like the generic warlord trait of +1 invulnerable saving throw, but you want to, or I guess you could just take that one. Or say you really like the Beacon of Faith warlord trait, you can just choose any one of your characters to be a Beacon of Faith and you get an extra miracle die at the start of the battle round. And yeah, at the start of your turn, so at the start of your turn, if your warlord's on the battlefield, you gain a miracle die. You can just spend 1 command point for Heroine in the making. Or you can do, if you're ordered the Evan Chalice, it doesn't actually cost anything because if your warlord's on the table, well, you get an extra D3 command points anyways. Or if you're really like Indomitable Belief, which is the 6-up or the +1 to your invulnerable save for all active faith units nearby, not active faith, shield of faith units nearby, the Beacon of Faith is ideal too. You can just swap out for that one. It's just, there's really good warlord traits, and I feel like Heroine in the making you're probably always going to use. I myself will probably always use Heroine in the making. I didn't use it for the game because I forgot to, and I'm a fool. The next one is Divine Intervention. The Divine Intervention. Literally, forces come in to save your warlord from dying, or a character from dying. For 2 command points, if your character is to be slain, at the end of the phase, return them back to life with X amount of wounds. X is equal to the amount of miracle dice you discard to give them wounds back. 1 to 3. A warlord automatically comes back. No 4-up roll to be made, so it's better than the Necron one and the Salamander one. Assuming you have miracle dice, though. Maybe you're always going to have miracle dice, though. In my experience, I never didn't have miracle dice in this game. I gained so much of them. This is great because it's guaranteed your character's coming back to life, and I'm pretty sure you can only do this once per character. You do not gain miracle dice for and you don't gain miracle dice for your character being destroyed because they're not destroyed, they come back to life. Each character can only be returned to the battlefield by the stratagem once per phase, or once per battle. That makes sense. If you can do that every turn, the characters would literally never die. As long as you had command points, that is. The next one I want to talk about is interesting. I don't know if it's good. If it was 1 command point, it'd be good. At 2, it seems a little pricey. This is Storm of Retribution. You choose to you use it when you go to fire a Retribution Squad or a Retributive Squad. Based on what weapons they get, these are the squads. These are the heavy weapon ladies with the heavy bolters, multi-meltas, or the heavy flamers. They get a specific rule in addition to what they already have. So multi-meltas range is increased by 12. So 36-inch range multi-meltas that melt at 18-inch range. Heavy bolters get +1 to hit, and heavy flamers get to reroll all their wound rolls. For 2 command points on a 5-man squad, I don't think they can get any bigger. I'll quickly flip over. I don't think it's great. I tried to use it in the game, and it didn't feel right, you know? Yeah. Okay, no, you can have a squad of 10 of them. That's actually not so bad. That's pretty good to use for a squad of 10. If you're going to run squads of 10, then that's what you want to do. I myself use squads of 5. That's probably why I didn't feel so great. Devastating Refrain for 1 command point allows you to reroll the amount of shots that you have on your Exorcists, conflagration rockets, or its missiles. Amazing stratagem. Probably use it every turn if you have Exorcists. You'd be nuts not to. Next one is Period of Faith. You, on a 4 or more, after attempting to resist a power, deny the witch, for 1 command point, you deny a power on a 4 or more. Now, it's interesting that you get to do it after attempting to deny the witch use the stratagem an enemy psyker within 24 of a Sororita unit from your army after the deny the witch attempt. Roll a d6 on a 4 or more. The psychic power is resisted. It's like the Iron Warrior one, except the Iron Warrior one costs 2 command points, whereas this one's only 1. But I guess you only really get to throw 1d6 when attempting to deny it. It's still good though. Like that kind of power, it can really throw a wrench in anyone's plans and is incredibly powerful. That is pretty much it for all the stratagems that I would like to talk about. There is a lot of good ones still there. You have to read them and find out yourself when you get your hands on this copy of Codex Adepta Sororita, which is real fancy when you get it in that new box that comes out with all the plastic models. I think would probably be the only way to really get your hands on the sisters right now. I assume they're going to be sold out almost immediately, but they'll come out more. Maybe. I guess I shouldn't make any promises. I don't actually know myself. That is going to be it for this first impressions. Now, if you like what you heard and you want to maybe see how they play, I bid you please go check out the Vault, which is our kind of support. Well, the Vault is how you support MiniWarGaming, how the people support MiniWarGaming. I'm at a lost for words right now. Sorry, there's a lot of talking. My throat is very dry. I probably should have had a drink. The Vault is where you are able to support MiniWarGaming and check out the other thousands of videos we have. Obviously, we have the Sisters of Battle game played in there. It was World Eaters, played by Kenny, my friend, and I played the Sisters of Battle. Now, there's also a lot of other content in there, so a lot of people, when they join in with the Vault for that 7-day free trial, you can cancel right afterwards, but we find that most people stick around because they like what they see. And there's a lot more original content to come. In addition to that, we do have the new store that is now selling a lot of our products, as opposed to just shirts. We have dice and tools as well now, and that is shop.miniwargaming.com. Now, folks, hopefully you enjoyed this. I grossly went over my time. I apologize. I'm going to keep making promises and keep lying to you every time I do a First Impressions book. You know what? You just won't be surprised. Maybe one day I'll actually accomplish it. But with that, I'll let you get back to your day. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you enjoyed the battle report that I did in the vaults. As always, we'll see you guys next time, and I want to wish you all some happy wargaming.